All right, I'm already on my fourth video for my little library here on my trip to VSG land soon. I don't know who my surgeon's going to be. If any of y'all are catching a glimpse of this video here and haven't seen my previous three, then quick recap is I have not had a surgery yet. I've been doing research for the last 2 years. I'm trying to give back to YouTube on the research that I have done and what I've come up with, and hopefully it will help some of you. I am will be 42 next month, 5'8", 213 pounds. In the obesity category, my BMI is 32.4. So that's where I'm at. I've decided on the VSG, and this video, number 4 here, are the top 20, well, the 20 questions that I've come up with. I highly recommend you watch at least my previous video, because I talked about surgeons that I've researched, and I've talked about, some things about technique that I've seen on some videos. And so some of those observations are what helped me come up with these questions. So if I give you a example of a question here and it doesn't make much sense to you, it will if you'll go back and watch the previous video. I'm going to make these questions available somewhere. I'm not sure how it's going to work out, but I'll have them somewhere down there where you can maybe cut and paste or print them off to take to your surgeon if you think they're good questions to ask, and you tweak them and make them your own. I want to ask the surgeon that I go to if he knows Dr. Serengel. I think Dr. Serengel is one of the pioneers for the standalone VSG procedure. He's out of San Francisco, California. His techniques are what I really, really like. And he's really expensive. He's $17,000. He is in San Francisco. I'm in Dallas. So it's there's a couple of things against what makes that feasible for me. I would be a cash payer, by the way. Even my comorbidities would not allow for my insurance to cover this. My insurance doesn't cover bariatric, period. Even if I was morbidly obese, it wouldn't cover it. Maybe there's a way to code that to where it would. I don't know, but I know that it specifically says even with diagnostic, it will not cover bariatric. So that's where I'm at. Anyway, I want to ask this surgeon that I go to, do you know this doctor? Because he teaches a lot. He is in the circles of bariatric surgery. So if they have never heard of him, that's actually something that is going to pique my interest. I'm going to be like, I don't know about Dr. Serengel. Everybody knows in bariatric surgery who Dr. Serengel is. He's just that good, and he's one of the originals. So if they know about him, if they do know about him, then I'm going to say, okay, well then maybe you're familiar with his techniques. Are you familiar with his techniques? That's question number 2. And they may say, yes, I am. Or no, I'm not particularly, I know who he is, but I don't know any of the particulars of what he does with his technique. So those things will weigh on my mind, and then that will prompt conversation that I would have with the surgeon, because there's things that Serengel does that I really like. And the surgeon that I talk with is not going to change his technique because I'm saying, hey, I like that one over there. I'd really rather you do that technique with me because I like. That's not it. That is not the conversation we will have. The conversation will be, Dr. Serengel does it this way. What do you do? And they may say, that's a great thing to do. It's not critical to do it that way, and here's why, and this is the way I do it. Blah, blah. And we may just have a conversation around it that's going to help me understand that I don't need to put all the surgeons in this tiny box of really you only need to do it that way. I'm not that narrow-minded. So I just want to use it as a prompt for conversation. I want to ask, at what point do you dissect the back? I say dissect, I don't know if that's right, but when do you separate the stomach from the pancreas and the spleen on the back side? When do you free that up? Because some of them free it up before they do the staple line, and some actually free that completely up after they do the staple line. Personally, it looks messy when they do it after, but maybe there's a big reason for that. Dr. Serengel doesn't do it that way, so I just want to know. I want to have that conversation. Because part of the question about being able to see the back side of the stomach is, what if the staple gun grabs more than what you intended back there? If you can't turn the stomach over to see where the staples are back there, okay? If you can't turn that over and see that you've maybe grabbed some extra tissue or something under there, if you can't see it, then how can that be any good? So I want to just know. Some surgeons I've noticed when they do the firing, when they fire the staple gun, they will hold it after they know that the staples have fired. They'll actually hold that down for 4 or 5 seconds before they release it. Some of them fire and release. Fire, let the staples go and release. Okay, there's some that fire, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then they release it. Okay, that seems kind of interesting to me. Why would one surgeon do that and one not? Well, the one that does feels like it's important for some reason. I want to know why or if the surgeon I choose does that or not. I would like to know, how do you, my potential surgeon, test for leaks while you're still in the abdomen? One surgery video that I watched, they had done the staple line, then they filled the area up right along that staple line. They just filled that area with saline. They just kind of filled up the pool there. And the staple line was below the water line. And they looked for bubbles. They put some air down in there and they looked for bubbles. I thought, well, great. That's an excellent way to look for a leak. You know, it works with my tires, you know, my car, so maybe it would work with that. They also will check the portion of the stomach that's been removed, because if that side has a leak, maybe the other side could potentially have a problem. So I want to know how they test it before they come out. They also do a scope. Some of them have done a scope down to where they look at the staple line from the inside of the stomach as well as the outside. There's some procedure videos where they didn't show that. It could be that they did it, but they just didn't show it on the video. So I want to know if that's a standard operating procedure that they do that, and if, what are they looking for? I want to know, what are you looking for? You know, if there's a drop of blood there, does that mean there's a leak or what? Let's see, what else? I want to know what would happen to my health if they nicked my spleen or my liver. You know, I know they try hard not to for a reason. Obviously, nicking them can't be good. So I want to know, if that happens, what are the consequences? Is that something you can kind of fix right there on the spot? Or is it really not a big deal that they get nicked, or what? You know, I want to know the answer to that. What's the plan? I want to know that they have a plan. That's really what I want to know is, if that happens, what is your plan to get it under control? So I want to know if they use a buttressing material with the staple line. If you're not sure what I mean by that, look it up on YouTube or look it up online. Staple line buttressing material. Dr. Serango uses buttressing material in his video. You can see what that is. It just reinforces the staple line. He uses a biological glue. It just literally looked like he was spraying it on there. It was really cool looking. I want to know if my surgeon uses that, and if he doesn't, why not? Has he ever considered using it? Would he use it? Maybe that's something he could do for me if I request it. You know, if it won't hurt and it'll make me feel better about it, maybe he'd be willing to do it. I think that's one of those things that it's not a technique item that I would be asking him to compromise, which I would never do, because I am not I'm not a surgeon. I'm not even a nobody. I'm a nobody when it comes to medical knowledge. But bio glue to spray on there, that might be something that I could ask for. I don't know. The pyloric sphincter is at the bottom end of the stomach. You know, I want to know how close they get to that. You know, yeah, that's a technical question, but how close do you get to that pyloric sphincter? Because if you staple line and you fire too close to that, could it be a problem? What kind of problem would be posed if you did that? And if he says, oh no, we only go, well, okay, well, if you only get so close to it, how do you determine how close you are to it? Is it just from the bougie that's in there? Or is there some other particular technique that you use? I want to know. I want to have that conversation. And same thing goes for the top of the stomach next to the esophagus. In my research that I've done, the leaks that happen, a leak can happen anywhere along the staple line. That's a given. But I have read and seen on video testimonials and stuff over the last couple of years that the leak at the top, how do I show this? Let me just draw it. Okay. Let's say this is the esophagus right here. If the surgeon cuts at the top of the stomach and he cuts right here, too close to the esophagus, that there's a leak potential right there, because it's just the juncture between this muscle fiber and this tissue here and the staples. It just doesn't give a good environment for a good seal right there. So what I have seen them do is make sure that their protocol is to come out here a little more in this direction, to come down and start the cut right here, and then putting in the staples, okay, right here, rather than too close. So I want to have that conversation with my potential surgeon. How do you, how are you going to make sure you don't get too close to that esophagus up there? Because I do not want to leak, okay? This is our due diligence, right, people? We're going to be asking all these surgeons these questions, and if they give you any kind of negative or bad feeling or bad attitude to answer your questions, not the surgeon for you. There's background reasons as to why we ask these questions. Yeah, we'd like to know the answers to these, but I'll tell you what I'm watching for mostly. Mostly, I'm watching for willingness to answer the question. I want to know, I want to get a feeling about this person and how they answer the question. I want to know if this person has an ego, horrible, negative ego that's, nobody knows any better how to do something than I do, kind of an attitude, and I'm not willing to talk about it. Or, hey, my stuff is so good that I don't need to defend it. I don't need to tell you what I do. I'm looking for that kind of stuff, y'all. And that's really what we're looking for here. We want to find the right person to do the surgery too. And I don't think any of these surgeons are just going to, blow hot air and give us what we want and just be an actor. No, I think you're going to get a really good feeling for what this person can offer you with their bedside manner, with their knowledge, and their ability to explain to you what they do. So kind of got off on a tangent there. So it's not always about the answer. It's about how they answer it. Okay. All right. Next, we want to go with, I want to ask the surgeon, where is the most likely spot for a leak? What's most risky? Okay. We may end up covering that with the previous questions that I had about how close are you going to cut to the pyloric sphincter and then the esophagus. So we may cover that in that conversation. If not, he may say, well, a leak can happen anywhere in there, but the most risky is when you are connecting the second firing. Like you got the first firing of the staples, and then you have a second firing. Okay, maybe there's a potential for a leak right there at that spot where the staples start up again. I want to know. Maybe he would say, maybe not, but that's what I'm looking for. I want to know what could cause the sleeve to kink. Sounds so bad. Or twist. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine, like, well, I really don't have anything here to show, but like if your sleeve stomach twisted, I've read that a couple of times, and it's not common. It's just not common, but I've got to have a conversation around that. I want to know what in the world would cause that. I can't even offer some thoughts on why that would happen, but I don't know. Maybe he'll say something like, well, people who try to eat the wrong foods too soon, or, she's not completely healed yet, or he may even say something like, well, usually it's something anatomical with the stomach itself before we did the surgery that may give it a predisposition for that. I don't know. So I'm really looking forward to the answer on that one. I had an accident. I mentioned this in one of my other videos. I had a traffic accident recently where I was stopped in traffic because it was a construction area. All the traffic ahead of me had stopped. The traffic behind me was fairly light. We all came to a stop, and I'd actually been stopped for probably, I'm thinking 10, 15 seconds, which, when you come to a stop in traffic, 1001, 1002, 1003, I mean, up to 1010, 1015, you've been sitting there for a little bit. Anyway, I looked up in my rearview mirror, and there was a 18-wheeler coming up behind me that was not stopping. And he hit my vehicle. He hit my Toyota Tundra going about 30, and then I got rammed into the Tahoe in front of me. Sent my airbags off. It totaled the truck completely totaled the pickup. And I ended up with whiplash, and, you know, I didn't go to the hospital or anything like that. I went to the doctor later because my neck was so stiff. I mean, it was, whiplash is the real deal, y'all. I mean, I don't care if somebody says they were in a wreck, they have whiplash. I saw the truck coming, and I braced myself up against the chair, trying to not be affected by the fact that this truck was going to hit me. And it still whipped me around like a rag doll, I guess. Anyway, so I'm okay, and everything's good. The pickup is getting replaced and all that stuff. So the company is doing the right thing. The truck driver said his brakes weren't working, which is why he hit me. That's what he claimed. And I, you know, watching him coming up behind me, you know, when you look in your rearview mirror and you can see a truck, you can see the person, literally, the truck driver, he was physically struggling to get that thing stopped. I remember watching him go, oh, he's trying to stop, but he's not going to stop. And I remember I just leaned back, I covered my face. So he came up and he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. He said the brakes were not working on the truck. He says, I was trying as hard as I could to get that thing shut down. And I believed him. I watched him try to shut it down, and he couldn't. So back to the reason I'm telling you that is I want to ask my surgeon, okay, let's assume hypothetically that I had been in that accident after I'd had VSG surgery. And let's say I'm completely healed. Let's say I'm a year out. Okay, a year out of surgery. Everything is healed. If I'd have had that accident, what effects could that... Is my stomach more susceptible to rips, tears, blowouts? You know, what happened? I mean, my imagination just kind of went... When I thought about that, I thought, oh, man, what would have happened? Anything? I mean, would anything really happen? I don't know. So I'm going to ask. And I'm looking to see if that doctor thinks it's a dumb question. Because it's not. It's not a dumb question. So I'm going to wait and see kind of what reaction I get and what answer I get. I'm going to talk to a couple of different surgeons. I may get a couple of different answers on that. I don't know. I also want to know, you know, I have a history of weightlifting. I have a history of athleticism. I can lift the weight, and I enjoy lifting weights. I can't now because of this weight I have around my middle and my knees. It's just, it's a recipe of problems. I've gone over that in the other videos. So I'm looking forward to losing the weight so that I can get back into what I love to do. So my question is, I know I'll need protein. You know, we're told, we're all told, and we all read that protein intake is really important. All right, I'll be able to get that in. I've got a lot of good resources for protein. I'm not concerned about it. I know it's something that I'll have to make sure I do every day. It's going to become a regimen. But what if I start lifting weights and I need more protein than I can I get to the point of needing more protein than I can get? I wonder. You know, feasibly get. So if I'm lifting weights and I'm trying to get ripped, I'm talking in good shape. If I get to that point and I need protein, will I be able to take in enough and prevent my body from going into a catabolic state? A catabolic state is when your body basically feeds on itself to get the energy that it needs. So if I don't take in enough protein, the body can go into a catabolic state. And the doctor may say, not as a woman. I mean, he may say, if you're going to go in and do some competitive bodybuilding or, you know, work really, really hard to where you're being just kind of like that's your sole purpose in life is to go compete and do that, then you might end up with an issue. Well, that isn't going to be me. I mean, my idea of working hard and getting fit is not that. So hopefully he'll put that into perspective for me and say, you know, you may have to be careful if you take it this far or whatever. So that's kind of my question with that. I want to know how soon after surgery I can start to lift weights. I want to know who he feels is the ideal patient. You know, he may tell me, well, the ideal, and there could be a couple of different ways to answer that question. Who's the ideal patient? Well, the ideal patient, as far as I'm concerned, and just sort of my purpose for asking, I'm a risk manager. Again, remember, I'm a healthcare risk manager. So my question is, what patient poses you the least risk as a provider, but what patient poses themselves as the lowest risk. To me, that's ideal. That's the ideal patient. But there's also another way to answer that question, and that ideal could also mean the one who needs it the most, who's gonna, who has active diabetes, but doesn't have high blood pressure yet. Or maybe that's the ideal. I don't know. So I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna ask if my BMI of 32 is how he feels about doing surgery really on someone with a BMI and the comorbidities that I have. And that kind of goes in with the last question as well, but I want to get into that surgeon's head, and I want a real a medically trained answer on that. I want him to say, it's, the potential for complications in 10 years with nutrition deficiencies, and if there's any, even if that's a factor, which I don't think it will be. I'm just saying as an example. I want him to tell me, look, it really is better for the person who has active diabetes or some kind of problem that they need to get rid of, because then the risks down the road they're not as serious as the one they're dealing with now. So I want to make sure that what I'm dealing with now is less than what I could deal with in the future with consequences of surgery. So if my condition fits the category of it not, outweighing the risks of not doing it, then, that's the conversation I want to have. And I know I was sort of stumbling there because it's a complex question that I haven't really gotten out. I haven't thought too much about how I'm going to ask that question. So that's just kind of the beginnings of it. I want to know if I could lose too much weight. I want to know if I have an out-of-state doctor, how they plan on taking care of my follow-up care. I want to know if surgery will help my low testosterone problem to where maybe I don't have to have the pellets anymore. I want to know if a protein-dominant diet that puts me in a ketosis for long periods of time, if that's necessarily bad, or if it really won't be ketosis for very long. I want to know some details about the complications that can come up, and I want to know if reflux would be fixed. So anyway, those are my questions. Bye.